Welcome to the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, where it is never too early for fantasy football. My name is Jeff. As always, thank you for downloading, listening, liking, and commenting on our podcast videos. Please join our community by subscribing to us on the socials. Our handle on all platforms is at N2E Fantasy. We are also available on all major podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy. Alex, what do we have on today's show?
On this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, we are breaking down the Week 6 action of the NFL. So we are going to go game by game as usual. We'll talk about points of interest, but first we have a little trading news for you guys. So we have a coaching change, as well as some big trades that happened today before we recorded this. So, Jeff, first, let's get some business out of the way. With the Jets moving on from Saleh going to their interim head coach, they play calling duties from current offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett, but they let him keep his job since he is buddy with Aaron Rodgers. So I guess Aaron gave the go-ahead for that, but he needed his buddy to stay there, and they traded for another buddy. So finally, Devonta Adams comes to town following this matchup, and can't wait to talk about later why they made this trade. But what do you think of these moves?
So are Hackett, Adams, and Rodgers like the Three Stooges, like reunited? Or is Lazard the third stooge and Hackett is just the guy basically holding the large key to the city, like the honorary key basically to the city, but doesn't really open anything?
I don't really know where Hackett fits into the situation, but
Oh my gosh. He has no place.
Hackett's probably the most useless coach out there, but he makes Aaron Rodgers feel good. I guess he strokes his ego on and off the field. I don't know. But Rodgers is trying to hold on to relevancy at 40 years old, and he's declining rapidly and trying to do everything in his power to try to look good and win. And Adams didn't want to be with the Raiders because of the dysfunction, and now is on the Jets. So
Absolutely. And Adams' biggest problem with the Raiders were the passes over the middle of the field, that he basically called them career enders, and he did not like being led into traffic, so he does trust that Aaron Rodgers will take care of him and take care of his body, so he'll be able to play another year or two. But I do think they'll pick up right where they left off. I think this will bump down Garrett Wilson a little bit, not too much, but they're probably both top 24 wide receivers, so they're both start every week wide receivers going forward. Teams are going to have trouble covering both of them. People do think that Lazard's is just going to disappear from the lineup now. I disagree with that. I think Lazard still has a place. Saw him catch the Hail Mary in the game last night. I just don't think that Lazard's just going to just disappear, especially after he has Rodgers' trust, and Rodgers got him a 3-year deal there when just before he got traded. But Adams is a good pickup for the Jets, and I do think the offense looked better without Hackett calling them during their game this week.
okay, we also had another wide receiver trade, big time wide receiver trade, and that was the Browns trading Amari Cooper to the Bills. Now, they reworked his contract to almost nothing before doing it, so the Bills gave up a third and I believe a seventh for Amari and a sixth. The Devontae Adams trade compensation, don't think we mentioned it, but they gave up a conditional third-round pick that can be a second if he becomes a first or second team All-Pro player, and I think if they advance to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think it's but if they advance to the Super Bowl, or if he's a first or second All-Pro. But either way, I don't know if either of those are that likely. So I think there's a sliver of a chance this turns into a second, but they may also be on the hook for a second with Hassan Reddick, too. So that second-round pick could be going a lot of different places.
Yeah. But the Jets are on the hook for Devonta Adams' contract, and the Bills barely have to pay anything for Amari Cooper. So distinct differences in these trades.
Absolutely. I like them both for different reasons. I think Cooper will take a little bit longer to gain some chemistry with Josh Allen and the Bills, but I think Devonta Adams will be able to pick up right where he left off with Aaron Rodgers in almost no time.
Yeah, I think Cooper is going to be probably the best type of wide receiver the Bills could hope for at this stage in the season. I think that he would be a good role model for Keon Coleman. You've actually brought that up offline, and I think that he basically can stand in for what Keon Coleman's eventual production could be. So I hope that this works out for them. They definitely needed a veteran guy, and I like Amari Cooper a little bit more on the ego side than a Devontae Adams. Granted, Devontae Adams is probably still a higher caliber player at this stage.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. It's all going to depend on how quickly Amari Cooper picks up this playbook and can be in the areas where Josh looks for him. The good news with Josh Allen is he's a quarterback that looks for people on the run, and there's a lot of less scripted plays after Josh Allen gets out of the pocket. We'll get to the game a little bit later, but Ray Davis had one of those down the field last night. So it's something that Josh Allen can do frequently. So Cooper's just got to be where Josh needs him to be, I guess. Sometimes that's harder.
Yeah.
Little schoolyard ball.
So we'll see how these guys fit in with these teams next week. But Jeff, today, your dream of Cam Akers becoming the starting running back for the Texans has come to an end with his trade back to the Vikings. Very interesting how this played out after Mixon and Pierce look healthy. So they no longer need him, I guess, and they shipped him back to the Vikings to cut him in the offseason. So what do you make of Cam Akers to the Vikings?
So, first thing right off the top of my head with that is Kevin O'Connell must really like Cam Akers to bring him back into the building. So that's my first thought on this. Second thought is the Texans must feel like the injury woes of the running backs are behind them. I think that's a little bit of a risk, given how many injuries that they've already had to begin the year. I think Tank Dell's missed a game. I think Nico Collins has missed a game. I think Joe Mixon's missed 2. Pierce has missed 2. I just feel like they're getting a little cocky on that side of things. Depth is never a bad thing, especially early in the season, because you would rather have someone get rested and try to come back towards the end of the season more healthy, especially when they're 5-1 right now. So they're heading to the postseason almost definitely right now. So it feels like a short-term move, but at least they got some compensation back for a guy that was basically free walking in the door during training camp this year. But I do know, Alex, that we did have battles during training camp that he was going to make the roster, and sadly that wasn't one of our bets. But I'll still take a victory lap over that. But and he had to start twice this year too, so in 6 games.
Well, he definitely got some play, but he couldn't keep a major role. He had plays where he looked like he was about to be good and then just disappeared, just wildly inconsistent. So I think he's more of a depth piece, and right now the Vikings are the team that need the depth piece. So this trade makes sense to me. I'm not big on Ty Chandler. I know he's been talked about for a couple of years now in the fantasy community, but I think Cam Akers is more of a threat for Ty Chandler, not with Aaron Jones, but I expect he probably is the third running back on the Vikings.
Absolutely. And you didn't call him Tyson Chandler tonight?
Yeah.
Even though that's not his name. It's Tykevis.
Yeah,
Tykevius.
Tyson Chandler is a basketball player, but I already
Yes.
said Ty Chandler's name beforehand, so I remembered.
I know. But I'm proud of you for remembering that. But I also wanted to try to say his real name here, Tykevius. I would assume that's how it's said, how it's pronounced, Chandler. Oh, right. So, do we expect Aaron Jones to miss any time with this trade, or TBD still?
To me, it's TBD, although a lot of speculation is people are worried about Aaron Jones. I'd be more worried about Ty Chandler, but it is what it is. Aaron Jones has missed a lot of time over the past couple of years.
You're not wrong there. But speaking of TBD, it does appear that the Steelers' quarterback job is TBD this week, as Russell Wilson is trending towards starting for Pittsburgh in Week 7 against the New York Jets. I know this is not a New York Jets podcast. I know we've talked a lot of Jets early. We're going to talk Jets on the very last game of the week also. But what do you make of this here? They're pretty much benching Justin Fields, or considering benching Justin Fields, for Russell Wilson.
Well, I have it on good authority that they're going to switch to 2 quarterback formations here on out, and we'll just never know which one's going to get snapped the ball.
One will throw, one will run.
I don't know what they're thinking at this point. They're 4-2. They're tied for the division lead. Has Fields had a couple bad plays? Sure, but I don't think Russell Wilson would have gotten them to 4-2. I mean, maybe 3-3 at best. I think Fields is the only thing that makes Arthur Smith's offense actually work, and without him there, I think that the offense is going to move less efficiently than it already has. the problems for me are the outside of Pickens, the other wide receivers aren't good, and Roman Wilson hasn't been ramped up yet. Like they've slow played him, so we don't know what this offense could be because they haven't been able to secure another wide receiver. They tried for Ayuk, it didn't work out. They tried for Devontae, it didn't work out. They probably were chasing other players. I don't know, but I don't see how Russell Wilson's going to make this better.
We will see. But I mean, they do have Cordero Patterson, who has had time at wide receiver and running back. They have Jalen Warren that can catch the ball as well. And then they have Pat Fryermuth. So they do have some pass catchers on this team. But maybe they feel like the short and intermediary way is to go with this current roster, and Russell Wilson fits that a little bit better.
We'll see. I don't think that it's necessarily the right move, but there's also speculation that they might just be saying this about Russell Wilson to make the Jets over prepare or waste time preparing for him. I don't know, but
They're
anything's
so
possible with
similar.
Mike Tomlin.
Yeah, they're so similar, though. I don't know how much time you would waste. Like, you might do a couple extra quarterback draws with Fields and guard the pass a little bit more with Russ, but other than that, like, I don't feel like you're making them waste too much time. But I know you're just nervous right now because now Russ is going to hit the starting lineup week 7, so we're in a little bit of a hole right here. But we have a bet that Russell Wilson's going to finish as the top 14 quarterback, and this puts you on blast and makes you nervous now that this could happen.
No, I'm not nervous.
Can't even fake it for a second.
Nope.
So, in order for him to get up to quarterback 14, he would have to score 94 points. So he's 94 points in the hole right now.
94 points plus the 15th most points for this coming week. So,
Yep.
yeah.
I know. I might be eating the L on that one. I might be eating the L on the Herbert bet as well. But Pittman and Higgins is really heating up, as is Richardson's over under 12.5 games is heating up, and Collins versus Diggs and targets is heating up. So
They've already said that Anthony Richardson's starting this week.
barring a setback. Exactly. Now that you get Pittman happy and getting him his happy amount of targets and such, it's hard to go back to the other guy. But they're going to do it. They have to, anyways. They have to figure out what they have in Anthony Richardson this year because they can't waste too much more time on that. Right. So one last piece of news really quickly. It looks like the Packers are going to make a change at kicker, and it looks like they're going to go with Brandon McManus. So that'll be an interesting change. I think he's a much more consistent kicker than Narveson is. I believe that's how you say the kicker's name currently. I don't believe they've cut Narveson yet. So how do you think he must feel if he is still on the roster looking at Brandon McManus's locker now next to him?
Not good.
So they did cut him an hour ago. So there you go.
Yeah,
He
they
has
usually
been
don't
cut.
keep 2 kickers on the active roster.
Yeah, I was just wondering if the transaction didn't go through yet. But so funny. McManus could have been signed to the practice squad at first, and his locker could have been right next to Narveson. And hey, what are you doing here? You lost your job, buddy. You lost your job. All right, you ready for some week 6 recap?
Yes, we should note that the Chiefs, Rams, Dolphins, and Vikings were all on bye week for week 6. So we
Missing
will
some
get
pretty big
started.
players there.
I know. The 2 best teams in the league right there were on bye.
Yeah, and 2 of the top 4 receivers with Hill and Jefferson out, and even Kupp.
And Puka. Let's not forget
And Puka.
Puka.
That's true.
But let's get started with the Niners at Seahawks. I'll just say Jeff and I each only missed one matchup this entire week. It happens to be 2 different matchups, but we both only missed one this entire week. So we are looking good. And this is one of the ones we got correct. Both picked 49ers. Won. This game really didn't seem very close. I don't know if that's how you feel about that, Jeff, but 49ers seem to have this one in the bag, and Seahawks always seem to be coming off their back foot.
Yeah, I think when push came to shove, I feel like Purdy outplayed Geno, but I mean, it was a decent game overall, but Jordan Mason is injured coming out of this game. So it does beg the question of who is next up, because CMC is about a month or a couple weeks away from returning or being able to return. So are they going to go with the rookie Garendo, or are they going to go with Patrick Taylor or Juszczyk? They have a lot of options there, and I don't know if you know the next man up. Going into this is not like a CMC to Jordan Mason 1-to-1 type deal. So they might have a running back by committee. Debo might also get some run here, no pun intended. But Debo and Kittle had great nights. Kittle overcame some minor cramping and was able to score 2 touchdowns in the game. So pretty cool there. I know you're a big Kittle guy. At least you have been previously. I don't know if you have any shares of him this year, but previously you had been a big fan of George Kittle. And then what's going on with DK Metcalf? I always felt like he felt out of place in Seattle. I felt like he deserved to be with a big armed quarterback. And do the Seahawks get to a point where they trade DK Metcalf, or do they just continue to put up with the mistakes that he makes, and then also the complaining that he does, which I'm not saying is good or bad. It's just he does complain when he's not getting the ball.
That's a lot of questions there. Right now, Jordan Mason is listed as day to day. They have 10 days of rest from Thursday night to Sunday. I think that there's a chance that he might play. If he doesn't play, Garindo would probably be the guy that starts. Juszczyk would also be getting probably some goal line touches, getting a little bit more runs. Like you said, Debo probably going to get mixed in that scenario as well. I like George Kittle. I think I've pretty much always liked George Kittle. He is the number 1 tight end in football right now, fantasy football, I should say. So he is performing at a really high level. Brandon Ayuk has not been very good since his contract issue and getting a new deal. So I don't know. That probably equalizes at some point. But as long as Kittle's healthy, he's great out there. When it comes to Seattle's roster, I feel like they've got too many big name wide receivers or just like talented wide receivers, because they have Lockett, they have Jackson Smith and Jigba, they have Metcalf, but they can't make all these guys happy. And I still like Geno. I still like that he rehabbed his career and became a starting quarterback again. But he is not the best quarterback, and he's not insanely accurate. I don't know why they threw 52 times, but you throw 52 times and Metcalf only gets 3 receptions. He had 11 targets, which means 8 missed connections. Most of that was Geno throwing off target, but some of that was Metcalf on his own. I don't know what to do with that, but I think Metcalf needs to go to a team with like a legitimate star quarterback, a team that needs a deep threat and a alpha wide receiver and will actually feed him. Metcalf would have been perfect for the Bills if they would have gone that route. I don't think that they would have though. Kind of like having Cooper and Shakir in one receiver, but they already have those two now. So I'd be very curious if Metcalf gets traded, because he is a little bit of a diva. I've been saying that Lockett would be the one to be traded, but that hasn't happened, and it would have already happened. I feel like
Not exactly out of it yet either, so there may not be any trades. But could you see either Lockett or Metcalf going to Kansas City?
I don't think that they would trade Metcalf to Kansas City. They might trade Lockett to Kansas City. If they traded Metcalf, it would be someone all the way across the country and not necessarily the back-to-back Super Bowl champs.
That's true. That's true. But Lockett makes a interesting case there to be traded to Kansas City, because I think immediately he becomes close to the one, if not the one, and he adds a reliable target for Patrick Mahomes. So interesting things to think about, because you do got to open up some playing time and some space for JSN. I know they run 3 receiver sets, but they have your buddy Bobo back there, and we know you like him, and yeah, we both got this game right. That's the last thing I'll say on this game.
So, just a couple more things. They have Noah Fant, who could become better, a bigger target in this offense if one of those guys leaves.
That's true.
But it's been really shocking to me that, one, the Seahawks surprised by going 3-0 to start the year. What hasn't surprised me is the Seahawks going 0-3 the next 3 weeks. That seems par for the course for this team. And they gave up on the run,
Absolutely.
so this week there's a theme of teams that give up on the run or unsuccessful and they lose. And that's one of the things that happened this week.
Exactly. That's what I've been preaching all year long right there, Alex, is that there's been teams that have the run game has disappeared. And that's why I was so benching Minshew, because there's no run game to go there right now. Like, there is nothing taking pressure off of quarterbacks. And that is on the offensive scheme and the offensive front line that's causing that mostly.
Well, so I'm glad you said that, because speaking of a team that completely abandoned the run, let's move on to our London matchup, the Jacksonville Jaguars and Chicago Bears in London. Jacksonville gave up on the run quite early. They couldn't get anything going here, and ETN only had 3 rushes. Seems like he got hurt. Bigsby wasn't effective either. They even had to trot out Dearness Johnson, and he wasn't very good. What do you make of this matchup? Because we both picked Chicago. I was surprised you didn't pick Jacksonville, but we both picked Chicago. Chicago demolished Jacksonville. What do you think of this game?
So, this was Jacksonville's first of 2 London games. So, I do want to state that they will be staying in London all week long. So, that'll be an advantage in the New England game when we get to next week's games. But what I took away from this was turnovers really killed Jacksonville. So, I noticed that Chicago and their defense really likes to knock out the ball. And I've noticed that from a couple of defenses this weekend, and they call that the Peanut Punch, and named after Charles Peanut Tillman, and he's a former Bear and a former Carolina Panther. And I just feel like if a team can't hold on to the ball, they are going to lose more times than not. And Jacksonville did lose ETN, and he's going to be out for at least a week, probably longer. They're describing him as week to week. But some positives in this game, though. We'll switch it over real quick here. Jacksonville, very positive to have Evan Ingram back. He is an integral part of the offense. He was slotted right back in. It does give me some pause and some concern for Brian Thomas Jr. And I saw some of his targets take a back seat to Evan Ingram, but Evan Ingram is the superior target right now, so I understand that. Gabe Davis, a couple drops, and he is turning out to be the biggest waste of money of the offseason so far.
What are you talking about? He just got 2 touchdowns.
He also dropped a whole bunch of balls, too. I understand his stat line looks good, but he did not play well. They kept going back to him. So I don't know why, but clearly they decided this was a Gabe Davis game. But flipping over to the Bears side of the ball, Caleb Williams is showing flashes as a rookie. And I know Alex and we have a lot of conversations offline, but this is one of the things that I look for in rookies, is to show me a flash, show me something that you can be. And Levis did show us that last year with the Titans, but he has not been able to do that again. So just because you show the flash doesn't mean that you're going to be good. But then on the inverse of it, being Carolina Panthers fan, having Bryce Young, I have seen 0 flashes of what Bryce Young could be as an NFL player. Caleb Williams is already ahead of Bryce Young on that meter, and I think Jaden Daniels is ahead of him in that meter. I think Drake May is ahead of him on that meter, and even Spencer Rattler after this last week. So, but Caleb Williams looked really good. He got Keenan Allen involved, which was really nice to see because I'm a big Keenan Allen fan. But I heard Keenan Allen was actually growing a little bit frustrated about not getting the ball. So they made sure that they got him 2 touchdowns in this game. And Cole Kmet was a superstar in this matchup. I know you have pause about him, but for a guy that caught 2 touchdown passes and was the long snapper in this game, I feel like that's a pretty big deal because their long snapper got hurt. That's a superstar right there, just filling in.
I like Cole Kmet. What I don't think is that he's not that great of a tight end compared to a lot of other guys out there. And DJ Moore was a little bit banged up in this one too. So when everything is super pass happy and the wide receivers are all playing well, Cole Kmet's going to be the back seat. Whereas, you got like your Kittle, who even with other guys out there, is still the tight end number 1. You have Laporta now, who he had a good game. We'll talk about it later. But other tight ends are just better than Cole Kmet. He's a solid tight end to have, but he's getting paid a lot of money for someone who's not a superstar.
I would agree, but he is a jack of all trades. He is. Wait, can you guess where Cole Kmet might be on the tight end list for the year so far?
If you're talking fantasy, he's probably in the top 10.
He's number 3.
Yeah.
So
It's been a bad year for tight ends, though.
He's behind. Who's the number 1 you think right now?
Kittle's number 1.
You're right. I'm
And then
impressed that
Bowers
you
is
knew
number
that.
2. Yeah, Bowers
Yep.
is number 2. And you said Komet is number 3? Probably has a
Yep.
lot of touchdowns. Probably has 4 or 5.
He has 2 big games, 2 20-point games. But yeah, Brock Bowers seems to be the most consistent. Kittle's right there too. Tucker Kraft was becoming consistent and then fell kind of off of a ledge this week. But I digress with that. Anything else on this matchup before we get to Tucker Kraft's team?
I will say this. I do believe that Caleb Williams had some really good flashes. But I think in perspective, I think Jacksonville's defense is terrible. So he definitely got some help there too.
Yeah, and I mean, if he didn't show it with a terrible defense, then you would be really questioning where he is right now, and you're not doing that because of what
Yeah.
the numbers and what he put up.
Yep.
All right. So we can hop over to Tucker Kraft's team where the Packers defeated the Cardinals. We got this game right, Alex. This is going to be, we might as well put that on repeat for this week. And some takeaways that I took from this game is it appears that Jordan Love is very close to 100%, if not 100%, after his early season knee injury. And I know that we just talked about this, but the Cardinals, they did not have a run game. And they even switched in the second half to Trey Benson to try to get that run game going, and it didn't work. And yeah, that's where they kind of walked away with the loss in this one, in my opinion, is they could not get the ball control on the run game going. But what are your takeaways on this matchup here, Alex? Do you think they stick with Trey Benson?
I think it's going to go back to James Conner with Trey Benson filling in. I think they just made a point with Connor. Not sure that it helped them, but it seemed like that they were just making a point. I'm more concerned if I'm the Packers that Josh Jacobs I spent all this money on. I kicked Aaron Jones out the door, spent all this money on Josh Jacobs, and he's wildly inefficient. And it seems like any other person that they throw back there to run gets more efficiency out of their runs. Because Emmanuel Wilson looks better in some regards. I know it doesn't feel like that for a lot of people, but this is something that I have preached about Jacobs, which is why I kind of avoided him. That said, I think he's still right now, points wise, probably top 8, top 10 fantasy back because it's been a weird fantasy year so far. But
You
it's
would be
interesting to
wrong. He
me.
is RB21.
He's 21. Okay, good. I had him in the 20s on my rankings, so I'm okay with
Good.
that. But this was a weird week. Jaden Reed, points wise, took a backseat to Romeo Dobbs and Christian Watson, who combined for 117 yards and 3 touchdowns. So that was interesting. What do you make of that? Do you think that was a one-time thing, or do you think these guys are going to be stealing points away from Reed going forward?
So I am not worried. If you watch the games, you will notice that Jaden Reed is by far the best receiving option that the Packers have right now. But with that being said, that does not mean that they're not going to spread the ball around. That is something that they're going to do. They've said they're going to do it, and they are going to continue to do it. With all of that being said, I'll go back to Jaden Reed, and he did lead the team in targets. And sometimes those targets are going to turn into conversion, and sometimes they're not. And in this particular scenario, he led the team in targets, but I think he only caught 4 of the targets.
He caught 6 for 6.
He went 6 for 6?
Yep.
So, he went 6 for 6. So there you go. So he had 6 targets, and he's reliable. So he did convert them all. Just they didn't go for the big play this week. But we did see him catching triple coverage just a week ago.
Yep. And I will say this for Arizona, early in the game, Marvin Harrison got a concussion, so that definitely affected him. So those of you out there, Michael Wilson is a decent waiver wire pickup for a week if Marvin Harrison can't go.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see there, and I'm surprised I just didn't give him smelling salts and put him right back into the game, Alex.
I know. That's what the Bills would have done. That's for sure.
All right. Anything else on this matchup?
No, I think that's it.
We got another one right here in this next matchup with the Browns falling to the Eagles. And this wasn't a very pretty game. I do think that these two teams were pretty evenly matched, which says more about Philly than it does about Cleveland. I'm pretty worried about Philly at this point, actually. And their head coach, because he did have an outburst with the fans where he had to apologize for. So that's not very becoming of a head coach. And I'm really worried about his chemistry with Jalen Hurts. But the difference maker in this game is the alpha that is AJ Brown. And I think he's an alpha 1 in this league. And I think that having him back in the lineup changed how this game went. I think if he missed his third straight game, I think that we'd be talking about a very different result in this game. Alex, I'll let you take it away from there. I don't really have questions. Just those were my two observations from the game.
I think I got a solution for Philly.
Uh-oh.
They should
Fire
trade.
Sirianni.
They should trade for the Browns head coach. So they should get Kevin Stefanski, rescue him from that miserable team, and immediately the Eagles are a significantly better team. Get rid of Nick Sirianni because he's an immature dolt.
So are the Browns right back to bottoming out then?
They're already there. They are already there.
Not again with that team. Come on. They went through quarterback hell to get to this point where they have a quarterback that isn't very nice, but guy that they spent a lot of money on.
Well, they spent a lot of money on Jerry Jeudy too, and that's not working out either. So obviously the GM and the owner are terrible with the Browns. And honestly, the Browns have the worst logo. They have the worst name. They have the worst uniforms. I don't know why they ever think that they're going to be successful. It's a trash heap of an organization. It's probably the worst organization in all of football, and it will remain that way unless all of those things change. I think ownership, GM, logo, name, all that stuff. I understand it's a historic logo. It's a historic name because it's after what? Paul Brown? Paul Brown left y'all and went to Cincinnati. So move on. Move on. Outside of that, Watson's the biggest waste of money in football. He's not good. I know that Jeff, you want to argue that he's better than people think. He's not good. He takes 1,000,000 sacks every single week. It's not all on the offensive line. He horrendously has the worst target accuracy when it comes to trying to get to Cooper, which is why Cooper is now on a team with a much better quarterback. And by the way, even though Watson settled his last case, the NFL is still investigating him. So they might have an opportunity to cut Watson without ramifications if the NFL finds anything ridiculous or really bad about this latest accusation. So, sorry, there's my rant.
Yeah, you probably know more about it than I do because you live near a lawyer. But nationally, I haven't heard too much about Deshaun Watson's settled case. But I will say that there was a point in this game where he did complete 11 straight passes, so that eliminates the accuracy issue. His best running back in this game went 8 for 43. And that's not good. And he's going to need Nick Chubb to come back and run the ball very effectively and wear down this defense because it's going to really help him have better pass protection, and he will be a much different quarterback with that run game. He has to be.
8 for 43 is 5.4 yards per attempt, which is actually pretty good for a running back.
But not nearly enough.
Well, yeah, they weren't getting first downs, but his accuracy, like you said, he was 11 for 11. Well, after that, he went 5 for 12. So not that great. I don't think he's very good, and I think that'll be proven. I think they desperately want to get out of it, but they don't want to bench him because they'll look foolish for benching him.
Yeah, absolutely. And he may not be able to. It might be an ownership decision as well. I do feel bad for Stefanski here because he is coming off of being coach of the year, and here he is kind of floating in mediocrity at this point too. So I don't think you can fire the guy that was just coach of the year last year. I don't think that that's a thing.
Well, I don't think it's his fault. Like you hinted at, I think ownership is forcing him to start Watson.
Exactly. That's where we are with them. Eagles, I'm worried about both of these teams this year, though, at this point. Eagles should be a super team with Barkley and Brown and Smith and a rushing quarterback, and they're not.
Did you know Stefanski is the 2-time coach of the year?
Really?
Yeah. He won in 2020 and 2023.
Okay. So I don't think getting rid of him is the solution, but what do I know, right?
Right.
Oh, right. You ready to hop over to your team?
Sure, let's do it.
Texans at the Patriots. We got this one right where we both picked Houston. And some of my takeaways to start off with this is Houston really missed Mixon, but they don't miss a beat without Collins. They put up a ton of points in this game. And just something that I've noticed is Drake May looked great. He showed flashes in his debut, which is great because that's actually going to really help propel him to the next level, hopefully. And Demario Douglas, Pop Douglas they call him, is Drake May's favorite, it appears, and he might have some fantasy value here from week 7 onward.
Yeah, I thought May showed some really good flashes, and his picks were him trying to make plays. They were without Ramondre Stevenson in this game, and that definitely showed. Polk looked terrible. So Demario Douglas, like you said, definitely looked really good. Kayshawn looked okay. Would like to see more out of Hunter Henry at this stage, but he did get a touchdown. That was nice. When it comes to Houston, I thought Stroud did really good and had a really iffy interception in this game, but settled in after that. I thought it was interesting that Tank Dell was the number 1 target with Nico Collins out. Diggs didn't really get targets until like the third quarter. I think that's when he got his touchdown. So Tank Dell looks like he's going to get peppered. Dalton Schultz looks like he's going to get peppered, even though Dalton Schultz didn't get much yardage in this one. What I thought was interesting, though, Damian Pierce had 8 rushes in for 76 yards. One of them was a beautiful 54-yard touchdown to go with Joe Mixon's 59-yard touchdown. Looks like both these guys are healthy. I think both of them are going to get more usage going forward. I'm surprised the Texans passed so much in this one and didn't run more, but I hope that they're running more going forward from this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And they don't have Cam Akers now, so one less productive running back.
Well, that tells you that they're really confident about Mixon and Pierce at this point. Dare had a good game the previous week, so I think those are the top 3 going forward.
I knocked on wood for you because they weren't good for 2 weeks there prior.
But Jeff, what did you think about Pierce in this one? I know you're a Pierce hater over there.
I think New England's rush defense isn't as good as it used to be. And I think that is part of the smoke and mirrors here. But I mean, it's very encouraging to see him take that step forward. I didn't know if he could this year, to be honest, after 2 years with D'Amico. So let's see if he can build on it, and then I will give you props if he can build on it.
All right. Well, let's move on to another AFC South matchup here, and we have the Indianapolis Colts at the Tennessee Titans. We both picked the Colts. Colts did, in fact, win a close game, 2017. Jeff, how much longer does Tennessee trot out Will Levis in this season?
So their other option is Mason Rudolph, and I'm not sure that's a much better. But yeah, you're going to lose your Kelvin Ridleys of the world, who was 0 catches on 8 targets. You're going to lose your DeAndre Hopkins. You're going to lose your Tyler Boyds. You're going to lose the locker room of veterans that you may never get back. So there is a point where you do have to move off of the young quarterback, but the Titans also have a obligation to figure out what Levis is this year so they can make a decision going forward. But in my opinion, the decision has kind of already been made. He is not the 4 touchdown debut Will Levis anymore. He is gun shy. He is making stupid mistakes. He's playing backyard football a lot of the time, and it's not good. But what do you think about Ridley's 0 catches on 8 targets?
I initially really liked Ridley when he was on the Falcons, but since then, I think he's vastly overrated. Obviously, he's not going to do anything when his quarterback only throws for 95 yards, so I can't hold him fully accountable for that. I think the Titans are a bad situation for him. I think the Titans probably pretty close to blowing it up for the year. So I would expect them over the next couple weeks to start trading Hopkins, maybe look to see if they can trade Ridley, although they probably gave him a decent chunk of change guaranteed.
That would be hard.
Pollard looks good. I think Tyjae Spears is probably out for a week or two, so Pollard might be the sole running back going forward. So he'll be the only guy I'd want to start really from this team.
I mean, he's fantasy relevant, but is there a chance that they trade Pollard? Or no?
Maybe they'll trade him back to Dallas. Dallas could certainly use a competent running back, and Jerry Jones has gotten a lot of scrutiny. He might actually make some moves halfway through the year. We'll see. But on the other side, I like Flacco, but I thought Flacco was kind of average at best in this game. I don't know why they didn't run the ball more with Tyler Goodson. Goodson looked like he was more effective than Sermon, who looked like he was running in the brick walls all game. I'm hoping Jonathan Taylor's back this week going into week 7. But if not, I don't have a lot of high hopes for this offense. I know you're a big Josh Downs fan, and he looked like he was the number 1 target but I really wish Pittman was more involved, and I wish Adonai Mitchell got more involved too, because I feel like that would boost Joe Flacco's stats, especially Adonai Mitchell having all that speed and yards after the catch ability. So I would like to see some changes, and I think whoever they start week 7, whether they start Flacco or Richardson, they both have their downside. I think with Flacco, the run game's worse, but the passing game's better. It's just not going to go to the guys that we all want. Richardson, run game's better with Richardson and under center, but passing game is worse. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I would like like to combine them and make an actual startable quarterback, but it's not meant to be.
Yeah. You did make some points before. Jonathan Taylor could be a big part of the run game that's missing. Flacco didn't play virtually any time with Jonathan Taylor during this stretch, so that might right that wrong. But you had mentioned Josh Downs and Michael Pittman, and it did appear that Josh Downs had been appearing as the number one target for both Flacco and for Richardson. He appears to be the first read for both quarterbacks, and I don't know what that means. I don't have any idea what that means right now, but Pittman is battling through a back injury, and it is interesting that he's not going to go on IR right now for it.
Yeah. With Downs, it's the way that they're using him in the offense. He's coming across the middle, and he's quick enough to get himself open for, short gain over the middle, and he's been pretty crucial there. Pittman has just been getting a lot of coverage, and he definitely looks slower with all these injuries, but he's still getting contested catches if the quarterback can get it to him. And usually, neither one of them is waiting that long to look at him. It's just what it is right now. I wish they target Mitchell more, but Mitchell is a little bit raw, but he's one of the best separators so far, 6 weeks in. That's got to count for something.
Yeah, I saw someone also throw out there that the Colts should explore trading for David Njoku from the Browns as well. I saw that on the
Why?
interwebs lately.
Mo Alley Cox is a top 8, top 10 fantasy tight end right now.
I'm like Sideshow Bob stepping on the rake in The Simpsons. But Mo Alley Cox is tight end 30 right now in fantasy.
I was
I had to
being
look.
facetious.
I know, but they do need a more. They need a more consistent performer and a large target that Anthony Richardson can hit over the middle of the field. I will say, though, if they do decide that Anthony Richardson isn't it, that this team is kind of ready to win and install a quarterback in with Pittman, Downs, and Mitchell as the 3 weapons. So if they decide Richardson isn't it, this is kind of a team that could be a high-powered offense with a rookie quarterback next year if they decide to go that route again.
It's hard for me to envision them being able to draft a quarterback because I don't think that they'll be in the top 5, let alone maybe not even the top 10 in picking. So that'd be kind of difficult, in my
Look at
opinion.
the rookies this year, though, buddy. Look at the rookies this year. Even Spencer Rattler, who wasn't a first-round pick, was he?
Nope, he was not.
And usually the first quarterback taken is the worst quarterback in the draft. I don't know why, but too much pressure.
Well, it's going to a bad team with poor talent around him, bad coaching, too much media hype, a lot of pressure,
Probably why
and
Caleb's so
I think
good.
that there's a lot of things that people just get wrong, and whatever reason that factors into the number 1 overall quarterback too.
Absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, we both got this game right. Richardson returns next week, most likely, as long as there's no setbacks. I believe that there's something going on there. But yeah, he had a full practice
You
Thursday
hate
and Friday.
you hate Richardson,
I'm not the one that
and
didn't start him this week after 2 full practices in a row.
you hate him, and he's barely been in the league.
I think he's overhyped, so I do try to keep him rightly hyped, I guess. He has not proven a thing yet, and he's got time. He's got all season. I would give him the rest of the year because you do have to figure out, just like Levis, you have to figure out what you have with him. You need to make a decision. You need to make a firm decision by the end of this year what you're doing because you can't waste one more year with Richardson if that's not where your full support is behind. Also, but what if there was a little Richardson for Kirk Cousins swap? And then you could have Penix start and Cousins be the quarterback for the Colts.
I think it would be a 3-team swap. So I think Cousins on the Colts would be really good. I think Richardson, I'm trying to think what kind of team he would have to go to.
Backing up Penix. He could back up Lamar, but
That
how do the
wouldn't be
Colts
bad.
feel about Baltimore?
Backing up Lamar,
Jaden Daniels wouldn't work because Jaden Daniels is so young. You'd want him with a more established rushing. Buffalo would be an interesting spot with Josh Allen.
yeah, I'm not giving up on Richardson. I think that we throw in the towel on some of these guys way too soon, and it used to be a decade ago, you give players 3, 4, 5 years to show something, and now it's, hey, you didn't immediately turn in results. I'm going to get rid of you right away. Like that doesn't make sense to me.
Well, they cost
He
so
was
much
always
after
he
year
was
4 or 5.
rough around the edges and just a really talented prospect, and he was always going to take time to improve, right?
And I'll stick
And
with 105 shouldn't be used for that.
when it's a quarterback, it should. Jordan Love had to wait, what, 4 years to start? He was a first round pick, and he waited forever. Aaron Rodgers waited forever. Sometimes it happens.
You pick the two quarterbacks with the franchise philosophy of sitting quarterbacks for 3 years before they start.
Okay. Patrick Mahomes waited a year.
He did,
And Chiefs
because they had
Chiefs
Alex
traded
Smith.
up for him when they already had a quarterback.
It was the best move ever. One of the best moves in
Yeah.
football history. Bills traded up for Josh Allen, too, right after Tyrod got him to the playoffs for the first time in 20 years.
Yep.
But that's how you do. Like, Carolina is going to be in a spot, as a Carolina fan, they're going to be in a spot here where they're reeling for a quarterback here for a while. So sending any rookie or any quarterback there is just, it's not going to help. Spaghetti against the wall. Nothing is sticking.
It's not going to help when they trade all their picks to move up, right? But if they naturally got the first overall pick and they still kept all their other picks, that's a different story.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But it's funny right now. They probably have an offense right now that could be led by a rookie quarterback with Thielen and Johnson and Leggett and Mingo. Like, they do have the firepower right now to be successful on offense.
What stinks for them is they're like almost their entire defense is hurt, and if that wasn't the case, they'd be able to stay closer in games. Because
Yeah.
I think even Andy Dalton, I think he can win games for them if the defense can keep it close.
There's just yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens in the future. I don't have my crystal ball out right now that you like to talk about, but perhaps I'll find it during our next commercial break, and I'll look into it to see where Richardson is playing next year.
Speaking of crystal ball, I have been saying for a while that I said in our predictions, and I've said in other situations offline that Spencer Rattler, if Carr ever went down, Spencer Rattler could end up running away with his team. And he looked like he was on his way doing it. That first half of the Buccaneers at the New Orleans Saints, I believe that they were winning at halftime, and Rattler looked really good. I know Olave got knocked out of this game, but
Yeah, and I
Rattler
think that's a big deal.
Rattler showed a lot of flashes for a flailing Saints team. Ultimately, Buccaneers came soaring back in second half and took the victory. We both picked the Buccaneers to win, so we were both right. And another thing about this matchup is I like Sean Tucker, and sometimes you just have to wait a year and a half, and good things will happen because Sean Tucker looked amazing. Bucky Irving looked great. It seemed like you got some thunder and lightning if you could have Sean Tucker be the power back and Bucky Irving be the razzle dazzle out there. I think, to me, the way that they played, I think White could be the third best running back on this roster. Jeff, what do you think about all those?
We'll see what they employ or deploy or whatever ploy that they have here, but it does appear that we're headed towards a 3-headed running back monster, which is terrible for fantasy football. So I just want to put that out there that Tucker's probably going to get his now, Irving and White when he gets back. But on the flip side, well, he didn't do a great job running the ball. He only had 40 yards on the ground, but he did have a touchdown, and he had another 24 through the air. Kamara had a pretty good game given playing with a rookie for the first time here. So he's almost appearing quarterback proof as well. So that's interesting. And I don't know if you noticed this, but I have to mention this from the box score. Means scored his first NFL touchdown. And I believe, if you remember when we were talking in the offseason, he was one of my my deep sleepers and my dark horses from the rookie class this year. And I did lower him at the end for A.T. Perry, who is not even on the team anymore. And but yeah, he had a good game. His first good game.
Jeff, can you tell me what that means?
It means that he scored 12.5 fantasy points in his first, I believe this was his first meaningful action off of 8 targets.
The Saints also have your former wide receiver love, Cedric Wilson Jr. as well.
He's just still chilling in the NFL, isn't he? He's got 31 yards on the year, though.
So I like Spencer Rattler, but I will before Carr got hurt, he was one of the best rated quarterbacks so far this year. So it's going to be interesting what they do between those two guys. But it looks like Spencer Rattler could be the quarterback of the future, and Carr could be the quarterback of right now. And
yeah, I agree. But I think you got to run Rattler out the next 2 games and just see if he can build on it.
I agree.
Well, Carr gets 100% with no setbacks, a la Anthony Richardson.
What do you think of your boy Chris Godwin looking like he's the wide receiver number 1 for the entire NFC?
Yeah, you know who he's just behind for the whole NFL is just Jamar Chase. That's it. It goes Jamar Chase and Chris Godwin, and those are the only 2 100-point wide receivers in the league. So half-point
Wow.
PPR, steal of fantasy drafts.
Nico Collins is hurt. Nico Collins, I think on per game basis, is still the wide receiver 1. I think.
90.7 points. He's behind Jaden Reed. He's the number 4 wide receiver. Jaden Reed's number 3.
Yeah, no, my point is Nico Collins missed the game because he was hurt. So on a points per basis, Nico Collins is the number 1.
We're doing PPGs. Who's the best receiver in PPG this year?
I still think it's Nico Collins.
You would be incorrect. Nico Collins is number 3 in PPG.
You're giving me someone who's only played 1 game, Jeff. That doesn't count.
2 games. AJ Brown, 20.4 and 20.6 in his games, so he's very consistent at least. And then Malik Neighbors at 18.5.
Wow.
Who I do believe is a stud too, by the way. I know we're not going to be able to talk
all 3 of those guys are studs. I would say I think AJ Brown obviously has the most pedigree of the 3 of those guys. He has put up more seasons. I do think that of late I would compare AJ Brown and Nico Collins a lot when both are healthy. I think they're very similar style plays. And I think that Neighbors is pretty close to right there. There's something common about all 3 of them. They're all very fast, very powerful, very tall, and the best weapons on their team. So that's very interesting. They're very similar to me.
Yeah, and they're so similar that you have to put the caveat when healthy in for all 3 of them as well.
Yeah. Well, Neighbors had a concussion. That's a little bit different than soft tissue injuries.
Yeah,
Soft tissue.
But we know Nico has a history of soft tissue injuries, and we know AJ Brown does as well. So it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's about which games that you miss. I would rather miss 4 up front than 4 in the back of the season. So
yeah.
Anything else on this game before we hop over to maybe one of the games of the week?
I hope that Rachaad White gets relegated behind Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker. I think those 2 in a committee is the best for the Buccaneers, honestly.
Alex, we haven't went to commercial break yet, so I don't have my crystal ball to see if your hope comes true or not yet.
All right, well, let's move on to the next matchup then.
I wish that's what I'm going to invest in next, is an actual crystal ball that just sits right here on screen. I'll just look into it. You could call me the fantasy whiz. Anyways, the Commanders and the Ravens, we both got this one right. We both picked Baltimore. They are very close in proximity, these 2 teams, so this was not a big travel game. Kind of a little bit of a mini rival being that close. And it does appear that the Commanders, at least on the offensive side of the ball, appear to be real this year. So that is something to be on the lookout for. Derrick Henry for the Ravens. He is now officially RB1 on the season. That's a pretty big deal considering people thought he was done, wasn't going to get a lot of run in Baltimore. That is false. He is RB1. He overtook Kamara for that spot. And I do have to razz you a little bit about Zay Flowers. I know that you thought that he would take a back seat this year, and he has not. And he's actually one of the bright spots on this offense. And I do believe last week I had said that Mark Andrews was getting the most targets for the tight ends, and as touchdowns would come, and his touchdown came this week. So looked into that crystal ball that we've been talking about this entire podcast here, and I saw a touchdown in his future, and there we are. Is he back?
So, with Flowers, I would say that I projected him with more stats than he got last year, but I didn't think he was going to be a top wide receiver. I don't know if he will finish that way, because if Mark Andrews is back, Zay Flowers isn't going to get the 9 targets, 132 yards that he got in this game. He got almost a third of his entire production in this one game. I don't think that that's going to be sustainable. I still think he probably finishes under 1,000 yards, but he's a very good wide receiver 3 to have. I like Zay Flowers personally. I was high on him in that draft class. Liked him significantly more than Quentin Johnston, who I wish I never even threw his name out ever. But Mark Andrews, I don't know if he's back. He'll have to do it more consistently for me to believe it.
Right. So Flowers is at 401 yards for the year. You don't believe he gets another 599 yards over the last 11 games of the year?
Is he going to do it in three 3 games and disappear in all the other ones?
Maybe. But what I will say, and this is switching gears a little bit, but Derrick Henry, I know that you told me after week 1 or week 2 that the Baltimore coach said that they didn't get him to run him 20 times a game. But once again, they ran him for 24 times this game, and we really
Maybe
need
that's
to.
what they meant. Maybe they meant it was more than 20 and everyone just read it wrong, but that was his quote. And I'm like, but that's what everyone thinks that you got him for, was to run down people's throats.
I
And
think he was the steal free agent of this year. He makes this team so much better, so much better.
yeah, he's the perfect fit for how the Ravens want to run their offense. And it's funny to me that Derrick Henry, his number one team he wanted to go to was the Cowboys, and they never made an offer. And Jerry Jones said that he was too expensive for him or something. Like, I don't think Derrick Henry's getting paid that prohibitive of a contract. Like, you could have
No,
paid him and given nothing to Zeke, and you could have moved on Dak and CeeDee Lamb earlier and saved money there. Like, Derrick Henry could have made the Cowboys' run offense look better than what it is.
exactly. But I digress. We both got this one right, as I said, but it was a very close game. It was 30-23. So I think Washington is right there this year, and I think that they're a playoff team this year. I know you probably think I'm a year early on them, but I don't see how they don't make the playoffs this year. Oh, right.
It's a very competitive NFC because you have the Eagles at 3-2, Dallas at 3-3, Giants. They're at 2-4 now, but they could come surging back when Neighbors is back. Minnesota's 5-0, Detroit 4-1, Chicago, Green Bay both 4-2, Atlanta, Tampa 4-2. Can't ignore the Saints from coming back. San Francisco, Seattle, Rams, Arizona. It's right now. It's too tough to know, but they have a decent head start. I just think that they're going to start slowing down.
Absolutely. But right now they're leading the division. So, and the Eagles are in trouble, the Cowboys are in trouble, and the Giants are the Giants. So they have a coin flips chance at winning this division.
Okay, well, let's talk about a division that we're still trying to find out who the number 2 is going to be throughout the year. That's the AFC South. Let's talk about the Chargers at the Broncos. Jeff, this was one of our two real differences this week, and you picked the Chargers. I picked Denver. You got it right with the Chargers. I think that we have two different perceptions of how this game went. I will say I think the Chargers were the better team in this matchup. I think that there are some things that if they went differently could have changed things. So we could talk about Patrick Surtain got hurt on basically the first drive, the first defensive drive for the Broncos. He's to me still the number one corner in the league. That affects coverage. That hurts a defense that has been a top 3, top 4 defense in the league. Certainly helps the Chargers. I do think that Herbert outdueled the rookie Bo Nix, but I thought Bo Nix played better than the stat sheet showed, especially better than the first half of the stat sheet. I think that Bo Nix had a off throw in his first drive where he hit his receiver in the hands, but it was too high and it tipped, got a pick. I thought he played much better after that first drive. He threw a strike down the field to Mims on the next drive, I believe, and Mims dropped it, would have got them close to the red zone. I think that two of those things could have affected the Broncos, could have brought them closer. Surtain being out could have kept the Chargers from getting anywhere into the 20s, and Mims catching that pass could have made the Broncos score in the first quarter. Outside of that, I think that Harbaugh had that illness flare up, which might have been triggered by the altitude, but he said he had like a heart flutter or something, so he left on that first drive for the Chargers. They ended up settling for a field goal. I think he could have okayed uh, them going up fourth down on the red zone, try to get a touchdown. They might have gone up 7 instead of 3. So there are things that happened on both sides that could have been different. Ultimately, Chargers got ahead, and the Broncos couldn't catch up. I don't think the Broncos have enough weapons around Nix, but I thought Nix played really well. Dodging sacks, he almost got his head ripped off. He still dodged that and made a big play. And he made some plays against tight coverage in the second half. I know you want to say that they were in prevents, but the guys he threw to were covered, and they still had amazing catches in tight windows. So good game. Just didn't go the way I picked. So kudos to you. You picked correct.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And I would argue that Justin Herbert doesn't have weapons to throw to right now either, at least well established weapons, I should say. So they're still growing, and he's going through growing pains. With Quentin Johnston, who you just mentioned in the last game, and with Lad McConkey and with Palmer. Palmer's kind of the number one this year. He's not really meant to be a number one wide receiver in any team. So he has some growing pains to go through also. And one thing that actually might help him in his growing pains is, Dobbins getting 25 carries. So that really is helpful. And Dobbins actually held up quite nicely. I know you have to give him some props on that one. I know you're not a Dobbins guy, but
When
25 carries
Dobbins
is no
stays
joke in
healthy,
this league.
yeah, when Dobbins stays healthy, he is very good. And he has stayed healthy so far this season and looked very good. So I'll give it to Dobbins. My issue is any
Yeah.
time that I thought about taking him and I did take him, he got hurt and I just couldn't stand that.
He's RB16 on the year, and he's already had his bye week. So he's a guy that he looks good.
And I think that's a crucial difference between these two squads is LA had a run game and Denver still can't get their run game going.
What's going on with that? They have three guys that they could, in theory, use and run, and they're just not getting them going for some reason.
I don't know. Their offensive line is a little banged up right now. I don't know if it's that or the scheme or sometimes you need to keep handing the ball off to one or two guys so they can get a rhythm. And it seems like Denver's mixing in too many guys, maybe. I don't know. I really don't.
Yeah, I don't think they can get into a rhythm. And the issue here is that Javonte Williams had 6 carries in this game for 23 yards. 6 carries. McLaughlin had 3 carries, and Estime had 2 carries. And then Bo Nix had 6 carries of his own. You really can't win in this league, especially this particular team, with Bo Nix being the leading rusher on the team for 6 for 61. I don't really picture him being a rushing quarterback, and you're only going to get him killed eventually. On the other side, you have Dobbins, 25 carries, 96 yards, and a touchdown. So that's big. But Vidal also made his debut in this game, too. So it looks like a couple rookie running backs made their debuts this week. And as I was saying, with the Chargers, I believe they could actually be a threat to a playoff spot if they make one simple trade and they bring back Mike Williams from the Jets, now that he seems to be a little bit displaced with the Devontae Adams pickup with the Jets. Just a thought.
Yeah, I think that he could be a good addition. They may not even have to trade for him. He may get cut from the Jets, so they may just be able to sign him. I don't necessarily think that they need that, but it certainly wouldn't hurt. I still really like Lad McConkey. I think Lad McConkey is going to look really good as the season progresses.
Yeah, there's just
I
going to
s-
be growing pains, and he's the only one then, too. I don't really trust Josh Palmer season long at this point. DJ Shark, who knows if we see him this year? He's still on IR. And yeah, that's about it. But I think that a welcomed familiar face might be a good thing with the Chargers here.
Yeah. Okay. We have the Steelers at the Raiders. We both picked Pittsburgh for this one. We both were correct. Do you think this was more Pittsburgh being good, or do you think this was the Raiders being bad, Jeff?
Well, let me give you the stat line. And this is kind of our hot take for the week, is that teams without running games are bad, and teams with running games are good, and they're going to win almost all the time. Najee Harris, 14 carries, 106 yards, and a touchdown. Probably his best game as a pro, or one of his best games as a pro. And on the other side, you have Alexander Madison, 14, 33 yards, and a touchdown. But 14 carries for 33 yards. That is unacceptable at the running back position. But yeah, this also might be Justin Fields' last game, and he was decent in this win overall. I mean, he had 2 rushing touchdowns, no passing touchdowns, 14 for 24 for 145 yards passing. I think they're hoping to get a spark in their passing game with Russell.
I thought Justin Fields was fine in this one. I thought Aiden O'Connell was fine in this one. I just think Pittsburgh's defense is really tough, and it was hard for the Raiders, who were already struggling at the run game, to get anything going. Najee had the most effective game I've seen for him probably in his entire career. I'm not sure I've seen him average more than like 4 or 5 yards per carry. He had 7.6 this game. He only had 14 rushes, but he had 106 yards and a touchdown. Pickens continues to disappoint. I think this whole passing offense for the Steelers is very disappointing. Raiders are just disappointing altogether. I agree with you that if this wasn't the Raiders, there's a good chance that the Steelers might not have even won because it wasn't that crazy of a game. honestly.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm wondering if the Raiders here start to bottom out this year. I don't really
Yeah.
see them having a wide receiver one anymore.
Yeah, they traded Devonta Adams, and now it's Trey Tucker and what's this
Jacoby
guy's?
Myers, Brock
Yeah, Jacoby
Bowers.
Myers. I would say Brock Bowers is probably the number one target there now.
Yeah, but they don't have a run game either. So that's hard not to have a true alpha number one other than Brock Bowers. I'll give you that one. And no run game. Neither one of these quarterbacks can succeed in this environment.
I'm still trying to figure out what's going on with Myers or Mayer. Sorry, he's
Michael
been out
Mayer,
for personal reasons for a
he's on the
while.
NFI. He'll miss 4 games going forward. But they never gave any details on it.
All right. Well, let's move on to the Falcons at the Panthers, and I'll let you break this down.
Woof. We both got this one right, sadly. Panthers lost. It was a 38-20 game, but in this particular game here, I would say Andy Dalton and Kirk Cousins kind of looked a lot like the same quarterback. The difference in this game was Dalton's 2 interceptions, and I believe that was the entire difference of this game was his 2 interceptions. Chuba Hubbard, Chuba, whatever we want to call him, 18 carries, 92 yards. So that is great. That should have been enough to win the game. And then on the other side, you had almost 200-yard running backs with Bijan and Algier, which just shows you how talented that the Falcons are with being able to run the football and kind of take some pressure off of Kirk Cousins a bit there too. But Pitts in London had a fine day, as did Deontay Johnson. But are you buying that Hubbard's going to be an RB1 the rest of this year, or are you selling it?
I think he'll probably move more towards an RB2 if
Okay.
Brooks comes in and Brooks looks good and healthy. I think Hubbard will fall to a flex play, and Brooks will be an RB2, maybe an RB1, depending on how well he does. I would just say probably RB2. Be
Okay.
safe.
He's currently 7 ahead of Bijan Robinson and Brees Hall.
It's not sustainable, but I think he's startable every week.
Yeah, if you drafted him, congratulations, you found another diamond in the rough. All
Yep.
right, last 3 games, unless you got anything to add to that.
Nope, not really.
Don't make me sadder than I already am, because I don't see a win for a little while on the Panthers' schedule here. But, all right, so I'm going to let you break down this matchup after I set it up, because I know that you're going to be gloating about it. But you won this matchup. Detroit 47, Dallas 9. And I'll let you go ahead and break this down for us.
Yeah. The Detroit Lions took out their playoff frustration on the Cowboys on Jerry Jones's birthday, no less. Just turned 82, and I think the Lions were shooting for 82 points in this one. I love just about everything about this game except for Aiden Hutchinson getting hurt. I think the Lions are a legitimate Super Bowl contender, but that injury really hurts their chances. I think that they might be a team that's interested in trading for Hassan Reddick, who is looking to trade his way off the Jets. I don't know if that would be a good move because it seems like players that hold out get soft tissue injuries as soon as they start playing. And don't know if I want someone who held out this long, but they need to do something to address that defense. I think Jared Goff looked great, looked like he couldn't miss. David Montgomery is quietly one of the best running backs in the league right now. Jameer Gibbs is a very versatile running back. Jameson Williams, he had a couple brutal plays. He had one really bad drop, but he had a really nice touchdown as well. Tim Patrick looks like he's going to be the wide receiver 3 for this team, potentially. I know Khalif Raymond was okay. I just don't think that highly of Khalif Raymond that much, but he wasn't covered. Sam Laporta had a seemingly wide open 52-yard touchdown catch. I know
One
he
for one.
dodged a defender at one point, but we'd like to see him get more usage.
Yeah, that's not a good usage amount, even in a win. 1 target, 1 catch, 52 yards, and a touchdown.
Yeah, especially after last season where he was the number 1 tight end, I would like to see him get more usage. I would like to see Amon-Ra St. Brown get more usage, but they really did spread the ball a lot, and they they just took it to the Cowboys, and I enjoyed it. They got to the Cowboys so much that Dallas radio host got Jerry Jones to be super sensitive when they asked him questions about the Cowboys and his deals and what he thinks he has done over the last 30 years to show for it. And he lashed out at them and went on a rant and was threatening to have them fired. So not a good time in Jerry world over there.
No, obviously my biggest concern for Detroit out of this here is I hope that this wasn't their Super Bowl from last year, and I hope that they don't fall a little bit flat after this. So they have to keep up the emotions after this game. I know this game meant a lot to them considering last year, so that's why I'm saying that. but they need to play with this drive all the time, not just against Dallas to prove a point. So, and then Dallas is definitely missing something, and I definitely think it's a good running back. We talked about Derrick Henry potentially going there in the offseason. It didn't happen, but they're missing something. Could they still trade for a Khalil Herbert? They're missing a star running back there.
Yeah. It's just funny to me that this could have been even more of a blowout. It was already 47-9, but Detroit was desperately trying to score with an offensive lineman this whole time because of how that playoff game went last year, or how their matchup went
It was
last
week
year.
17 though. It wasn't a playoff matchup. Am I
Yeah,
correct on that?
yeah, I corrected myself.
Okay. So, but yeah, so I just hope that Detroit keeps up the same energy going forward, and it just wasn't a one-time only Dallas payback episode.
Yeah, well, they're next week going into Minnesota to play a blitz happy, good defense. So that's going to be tough.
Yep. All right. So we can hop over to the last two games. We got these both right as well. We actually had really good weeks with picks this week, Alex. But so the Bengals here beat the Giants, and a couple of things that I noticed. This was a very low scoring matchup, which was a little bit surprising. But it was Joe Burrow's legs that won this game for Cincinnati. He scored a 40-some yard touchdown. Daniel Jones put up a dud, which was a little bit surprising considering how bad Cincinnati's defense has been recently. But Higgins is kind of Cincinnati's number one wide receiver right now. And as far as targets go, I should say, I shouldn't say in fantasy points, but as far as targets
Chase
go,
has twice as many yards as him.
yeah. But I do think they make each other better because it makes it really hard to cover both of them. So they're in a spot where they need to look themselves in the mirror kind of quickly here and maybe figure a way to keep these two on the same team, because when these two are out there together, it is near impossible to cover both of them. So it's just, and then you've got the third receiver that like Tyler Boyd or Yoshi, and they're just wide open because you're concentrating so much attention on Chase and Higgins. So my last point in this game here is Chase Brown appears to be taking over as the RB1. So anything that you noticed that I didn't notice?
No, I think that covers it.
Tyrone Tracy did good in the pass game too. 6 catches on 6 targets for 57 yards. So interesting with Singletary coming back really shortly, but he'll probably keep a slice of this role going forward. All right, Monday night game where we saw a ton of officials in this game. The Bills at the Jets. And the Buffalo Bills won. We both won this matchup. James Cook was a late scratch, and Ray Davis filled in, and he looked the part. Made a really nice long catch, and also rushed for quite a few yards, 97 yards on 20 carries. So he was able to handle 20 carries in his first game as an NFL starter. And they won. Kicking and officiating were questionable at best in this game. The only good news about the officiating is it did seem fairly consistent. So they were calling calls for both teams in the same situation. I would just rather they swallow eggs and the whistles altogether. And both offenses looked better than expected considering the injuries and the changes that they've all went through.
Well, apparently not good enough because both these teams traded for a star wide receiver. As we talked about at the beginning of the episode, Jets, after this game, decided to add Devontae Adams. Bills retaliated by going after Cooper. So these teams are trying to stay competitive, and the Jets aren't giving up on the season.
Yeah. You see these, Alex? You know what they call that? They're
Fans?
bookends. No, they're bookends. We bookended the episode with the Jets and the Bills, and we opened it with the Jets and the Bills.
Well, that sounds like a good place to end it. All right. Well, that does it for this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for downloading and listening to this episode. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. Please leave us a comment and share the show. Every little bit helps.
And you can find us on all podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy and with our handle at N2E Fantasy on all social media platforms. Please join our community and give us a follow. Until next time, take care of yourselves and remember, it's truly never too early for fantasy football. Thank you again.
Bye, everybody.